One of the hardest biblical admonitions that can be given to people like myself, who, if we're not careful, become sort of big-headed, is the slow to speak, quick to listen sort of approach to life. It's one of the hardest things for us to deal with, I've just got to tell you. And I have to be real careful to beat myself down sufficiently to make it so that I don't override and overdrive what other people have to say to me. I don't want to do that. And I want to talk today on this subject that sort of relates to that. It is, I'm listening on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Friday the 29th of April of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That's the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there on Facebook, on Minds.com, that would be minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, on Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be picking me up today. The subject, as I say, is I'm listening. I want to go through my notes real quick because I think it helps me to sort of elucidate exactly what it is that I'm trying to put out there. In the course of more than half a century on planet Earth, I've heard some pretty ridiculous things. There were even some that made it so I felt the need, at least for a time, to ignore various folks. I'll just tell you that. Most of the time, I'll at least periodically check back in on those individuals to see where they are today. And you can understand why when you see certain of the things that Mr. Elon Musk has had to say about himself in terms of his growth, in not just a political sense, but in a sort of a cultural sense as well. He said that he's sort of moved farther to the right, and he makes the argument further that the left has moved farther from him over the course of time. So that's another consideration. That said, for the most part, it's been a thing for me to listen to others, even when I found myself vehemently disagreeing with what they had to say. Okay? More importantly, unless they were flouting standards of morality or decency, I've pretty much never silenced anybody. I've let them say their piece. And where possible, even if I shut them off in terms of my personal presence, I have not asked for them to be censored. Don't want that. It's not a thing of interest to me. Most folks I know on the supposed political right take more or less that same approach to life. They're pretty much in the same place. To begin with, all such folks I know realize they might be wrong at times. There's a possibility we're wrong, okay? And I'm not just talking about others, I'm talking about myself as well, of course. On top of that, they tend to desire to hear what others are saying, if for no other reason than to know what they were battling, right? They want to know what other people are saying, because otherwise, how do you know what people are saying? Even if they're wrong, you have to know. It's with that mindset that I think of the recent sale of Twitter to Mr. Elon Musk and wonder why so very many, mostly on the supposed left politically, want to at least jump ship on that platform. Some seem to be interested in silencing the platform, at least where conservatives are involved. Believe it or not, I understand that better than wanting to leave. It's likely there are people out there who really don't want their ugly underbelly or that of their affiliates or associates to be exposed. Can I tell you a secret? I may not be squeaky clean, but if you're going to expose me, and I put expose in quotes, I guess you'd better get after it. You better do it. And if you're asking whether or not I want that for others who are supposedly, quote, on my side, end of quote, the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, I do. If they're doing right or wrong, I want not just to know it, but I want it known. I want people out there to know it. How can we decide how to react otherwise? How can we do that? To be fair, I'm not just going to believe folks who attack others, whether on the left or on the right. Too many individuals have a vested interest or multiple of them and want to protect or serve it, or again, them. All that said, though, if you think I'm worried about misinformation or disinformation getting out there, you're right. But that doesn't mean I want individuals silenced as a result, even if they appear to be putting dis and misinformation out into the public. I don't want them silenced for that. It's for me to decide whether that's what's been said is real and meaningful or full of hokum. That's on me. That's not on you. That's not on somebody else. It's on me. I don't need or want others making that decision for me. Not Twitter, not the government, not any other company, obviously. I don't need anybody, not any individual. I don't need anybody doing that. Children might need parents to govern that a little bit, but pretty much anybody else, you're calling me a child if you think that's needed for me. Further, how I respond to that is also on me. One thing I'm pretty sure of is this: there will be truth tellers and dealers in bad information out there. Sometimes even the best will get things wrong, and the worst will end up saying profound and worthwhile things. The point of what I'm saying is pretty easy to get to. Please let me listen and let me decide who's being honest and who's not. And I know sometimes that's going to be hard. Okay, so I'm done with my notes. I know it's going to be hard. I'm not saying I'm always going to get it right either, by the way. But if you try to tell me, well, this is how that works, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to accept that you have all the answers to everything there is to talk about. I'm just not. I'm not even going to accept that largely you have the answers to things. But here's my answer. If, in fact, you have an answer to something that somebody has said, put it out there. And you don't even have to put it on what they say. Just put it out there. Just make it known. Okay? This is what I'm trying to get at. This is what I'm trying to say. I don't want you deciding for me what is or is not mis or disinformation, or for that matter, what's good information, what part of what is good, what part of what is bad. I don't want you deciding that for me, and I don't want you thinking you have the right to do that. People are pointing to the Second Amendment and saying that the government has no right to do that, and talking about what they're referring to these days as the, quote, Ministry of Truth. And funnily enough, I did my topic on this before I heard people talking about that and what Mr. Mayorkas and various others were saying, right? I did my topic today before I heard any of that, because this is something that I think is really important. I want for you to know something. I'm listening, and I'm not just listening to conservatives. I'm still on Twitter. I'm still on Facebook for as long as they let me stay. Whether or not they're hardline leftists that are running things, now, of course, Twitter, it's changing, but Facebook and YouTube and various others, I will hear and see things from other sources. And I'm here to tell you something. All of these supposedly right-wing, quote, reporters, they're not reporters, they're not really journalists, and they're opinion people, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But all of those individuals will cite left-wing individuals, and they will generally let them speak for themselves. They don't have to say anything more a lot of the time. They can just let it go. In fact, Drew Berquist has a habit of going, this is what they said. Okay, I don't need to say anything more about that, right? Sometimes he'll still elaborate or elucidate or whatever, what he feels like they're saying. But my point is he doesn't really need to, because if you listen carefully to what people are saying, you're going to go, oh, what's that about? Why are we creating a disinformation or misinformation, whatever you want to call it, in the Department of Homeland Security? I heard somebody do something else recently, and it was to point out that there's disinformation and misinformation coming out of the government. And by the way, I don't care if the government is rightist or leftist. Guess what? That's going to happen. It's going to happen. You need to know it. You need to believe that it's true. And so he said, basically, you talked about this thing, and look here, see, this is what happened. You talked about it like this for a long time. It came around that this was what was actually going on. You guys were wrong about that. You were spreading disinformation and misinformation from the government. Now, how is it that you think you should be the arbiter of truth? And that's particularly true in the federal government, where the First Amendment is concerned. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is concerned. Right? How can they do that? How can you expect that that's an okay thing for them to do? I can't. And I don't want anybody privately doing that. Like I say, I don't want Twitter. I don't want Facebook. I don't want anybody doing that. I don't need your stuff to tell me, oh, this is the current status on COVID or climate change or whatever. I don't need you doing that. I'll look around and see what I find. And if I find that what people are saying is invalid, I personally will note that, and I may do something to publicly fight it. But you know what I find for the most part? It's the people spreading disinformation and misinformation who want to silence dissenting voices from themselves, counting and treating them as spreaders of disinformation and misinformation. Those who don't care whether or not the people who are really interested in disinformation or misinformation are doing what they're doing, those people are usually the people who A, are mostly truth tellers, obviously not all the time, and B, obviously do not typically want to censor or silence others. Okay. Need to go ahead and wrap up. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is the 29th of April, Friday the 29th of April of 2022. That would be the beginning of the Sabbath for those who celebrate it, the end of the work week. For those who work that Monday through Friday grind. Tomorrow then will be Saturday, the 30th of April of 2022. That would be the end of the Sabbath for those who observe it at sundown, as far as I understand it, on Saturday. Again, Saturday, April the 30th, in case I didn't say that. Thank you for everyone who's been around here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on locals.com, on Minds. That would be Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com. My Facebook page again would be Kurt's Religion and Politics. Minds.com, minds.com. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, primarily there on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be finding me. Subject for today has been I'm listening, and I am, and I want you to know that, not just to right-wing voices, not just to left-wing voices. I'm listening to lots of different people say various different things. Tomorrow's subject is going to be our children, with an emphasis on the idea that society, quote, owns children, which the first thing that I'll tell you is no secret, and that is that such an idea is almost always a communist or socialist one. I'll talk more about that tomorrow and do what I can to sort of tell you what I think about all of that. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's edition. That would be Saturday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Friday, the 29th of April of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. Minds, minds.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, and Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.